Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to my monthly journal pages. Today we'll be flipping through my July pages and chatting about the journal spreads, techniques, and ephemera I created to connect with my personal tarot practice last month. So in July, the deck that I worked with primarily was my Chrysalis tarot, and I created this little fun notebook insert for my traveler's notebook, which is kind of what I'm back into now for my tarot journal. So all of these I create by hand, cut the pages, pick out the papers, cut the pages, and then I stitch them together so that I can create little journals that kind of match the theme or the energy I have for the month. So here in the beginning, I have some scrapbook paper that I used as kind of just a little first page intro, and then this is a little write-up I did. So although I've used the Chrysalis tarot, for quite a while before actually really diving into it, I hadn't actually read the book. There is a separate book which I mentioned in my July reflections video. But I'd had it for a long time and I'd just never actually taken the time to read it. So I did read the introductory information in the actual guidebook, the full guidebook, which was really interesting. I took some notes and just noted them in here, kind of just some key elements about the deck that I felt were important. I also did a little doodle here for each of the suits because each of the suit names have been changed. And sometimes I forget. I mean, looking at this now, they look they totally track, right? Stones for earth, mirrors for water, water's reflective, spirals for fire, and scrolls for air. It totally works, and I totally understand the connections, but sometimes when I was actually working with the deck, I would get a little confused about which suit was which. So having this in here was just really helpful, just for me to quickly look through this and to see which element it was associated to, so that I could know which traditional suit that it was also associated to. And then this just was a little quote that I wrote down from the book that I thought was really nice. And then here we begin with my first entry, and this is a kind of a new journey spread that kind of was a sort of a deck interview spread. However, I don't really call it that because I have, like I said, I have worked with this deck before. I've just never actually worked with it with the book. And so I thought this time I did kind of an interview spread, and I pulled quite a bit of information out of the book. So I did some stamping on it, of course, different colored pens, which for me relate to different things. Generally, when it's written in cursive and it's black, that's generally my own thoughts and feelings. And generally, when I write in different colors, that's usually things that I pick up from the other guidebooks. So that's just kind of a quick way for me to associate when I have big chunks of writing like this, that this was not my words, right? This was from the book, and then this was actually my words. So that's just a kind of quick visual reminder for me to use the different colors and to also sometimes vary up my handwriting. And I just put a little piece of, glued a little piece of fabric on here because I just thought that was kind of fun. And then so here we have the continuation of that reading. So it basically started of what our connection is, what we will grow together. This will be our challenge, and how can we best work together. So it's basically a 4-card reading, and then I just broke it down into what each of those 4 cards kind of meant to me as I went through this particular reading. I did some stamping with this one as well. These first few pages I kind of did a little bit more work on for the most part, because I like the way that my images come out. I like the way the colors come out. They're richer and deeper when I just put them on the scanner, on the flatbed scanner, and just color copy them versus taking a photo and then taking the photo into Photoshop and trying to adjust the colors from there and then reprinting it. The colors just aren't quite as vibrant when I do that. So when I have the opportunity to kind of just put cards into my scanner and actually just like color copy them straight from there, I get these really great, vivid, clear prints. And I just really like the way that they look in my journal. It really helps me to pick out details when I'm going back to look at these. These are, of course, all reduced in size, you can tell, because here's the original cards. So I shrink them down. My scanner has an option for reducing the size. So I can reduce all the sizes down so that they don't take up quite so much of the page. However, sometimes I do leave them full size, which we'll see here, because this is definitely a full size card. And so this was just a little bit of this was a 1-card pull with a little bit of kind of collaging with some papers or with some fabrics, really. I have a little piece of fabric here, a piece of fabric here, which is actually the inside of the tarot bag. It's the remnants from the tarot bag. And then some lace, and then I just stamped out the date, and then this was a little key phrase from the actual book. And so this was kind of just like a mindful moment card, just kind of pull it, connect with the card, connect with the energy of the card throughout the day. Didn't really necessarily need to do a bunch of journaling on it, just kind of wanted it there as a reminder that that was my card that I pulled for the day, because I had kind of my beginning reading already in place for the week. And then so here we move on to the first self-care Sunday. And then here I actually only made a color copy of one of the cards that I pulled. So I pulled the King of Pentacles and I pulled the Three of Cups. And this one I did a little bit of collaging. I also pulled from the Land Sky Oracle, the Fish Pose card. So I cut him out and I cut the cups out, and I just kind of did a little bit of fun kind of collaging with it, and then just my interpretation. And sometimes it's fun to just mix it up like that, to just pull elements out of the cards rather than, you know, using the whole card itself. Sometimes that's fun as well. And here we get into really my first weekly reading with this deck, and I pulled 3 cards, I believe. Yes, pulled 3 cards for this one, so I have 2 of them over here. These 2 cards showed up quite frequently for me throughout the month. This is just on the back side of that scrapbook paper, and I just made a little tag. This is actually the back side of the rest of this, so this is an index card that I just cut down to size. And for this one, I just flipped it over and used the white side, distressed it all up with some ink, and added, you know, the tag, my text there, and then the little border around it. All done with ink and pen on an index card. So really quick and easy to do. And then here I have my reflections for each of the, for the card that I pulled. Again, this is, like you can tell because the text is different, this is actually from the guidebook. So little key elements that I picked out from there. Then I was checking back in with this reading in relation to this card. So you kind of think of the first of the week, the middle of the week, and the end of the week. And that's kind of how I did it. Even though I pulled all 3 of these cards on Monday, I just kept them and, you know, checked back in with each one to see how each energy was manifesting throughout the week. And this was just a fun little spread that I did from using the Mystical Goddess Tarot. This is, of course, my little trimmed version. And I just, you know, was kind of called to pull a couple cards from it, kind of got a little bit of a message, put that in there. This is, have been working with Hecate anyway, and so I pulled this image out of the Goddess Oracle, and I just added this little title on here. I just felt like I needed to add that image to this journal. I just felt really called to that image. And then moving along, we have my next Self-Care Sunday spread. And this, again, I was using the Land Sky Oracle and the White Sage Tarot all month long for all of my Self-Care Sunday spreads. Then we have my weekly reading for the next week. And again, just did some kind of fun paper crafting here. Again, color copies of my cards. There's that Pilgrim. She shows up many times throughout the month for me. And I included some stickers this time just to kind of add that little botanical flourish to it. And just my little notes. There's some stamping behind here, but I wasn't really thrilled with the way it came out. So I kind of just, you know, put everything over the top of it. And here's the other side of the third card. And then you can see I have a big sticker here. This was just another card that I pulled again from that Mystical Goddess Tarot. I just felt called to pull a card for that, and then my prompt was, or my question was, what should I be focusing on with my practice? And I pulled this card and, you know, wrote about a little bit what it meant to me. And this was just a 1 card kind of mindful moment collage and kind of some journaling reflection that I did on this Thursday. I used the Llewellyn Tarot and I pulled the Hangman, and I did some collaging around it. There is some fabric, some paper, some tracing paper, coffee dyed paper, washi, stickers, and this little tag here that I wrote the word perspective. And then this is, of course, my reflection. I love to do these in my journal when I have the time to just really pull a card and really sit with it, really journal about what it means to me. Those are really wonderful practices. And this one, I've got this covered up because this was a really kind of personal reading that I did in terms of some things to do with my kids. And so I just have my cards over here. I used the Tarot of the Trees, which I didn't share in my monthly reflections because I only used it for this one reading. There is a new edition of this one coming out, and I did go ahead and order it. So at some point when that's available, we'll be able to see that too. So here I did in the center, so this is the center of my signature, or the center of my notebook where my band sits. I did a mid-month self check-in, and this is just my basic 4-element check-in where I pull a card to represent each element, to represent each aspect of self. And so I have each one that I pulled, did just some stamping, and then my little reflections on here on what it was. And so for this one, I was stamping the right way. All my words look good. For this one, I was trying to stamp backwards, and apparently, even though like water and fire are really simple words, apparently trying to stamp them backwards, I misspelled them, both of them. So I just had to stamp over the top and fix it, and yeah, it's fine. But it's kind of a little bit funny that I couldn't manage to make a 4-letter word backwards. It is what it is. And I apologize for the noise in the background, but I've tried to film this video multiple times now, and we're just going to go with it, and hopefully it's not too distracting. So here's the Always Growing spread that I did on Saturday. This is one of the spreads that actually was out on my Instagram, and I think they usually come out on a Wednesday, but I didn't do it till Saturday. And I just pulled 3 cards from the Chrysalis Tarot and then my reflections there in answer to those 3 prompts. I really like these 3 card spreads. They really kind of help me connect into different aspects of my practice, my life, and all that kind of stuff. So here we have another Self-Care Sunday spread. And this is the What Do I Need to Embrace Today spread. And you can see here I just have the prompt. I have my 3 tarot cards. I did pull a card from the Land Sky Oracle, which is up here. But it just really had this really simple image. I mean, granted, I shrunk it down. So I just cut everything and just kept the malachite there for that one. And I do have the tag here, and then, of course, my reflections. And then moving into the next week, I pulled just 2 cards for that week and really dove into the book. So the majority of this is from the book. Really key information that I thought really related to these 2 cards, is particularly for the fact that they were both majors. I thought it was just really interesting to dive deep into what the book had to say on them, because this book, or this deck, does approach the majors a little bit differently. I do have my own reflections as well and how those cards relate to me and what's going on in my week. But I really wanted to dive deep into the actual book in terms of these cards as well. So I did that on that Monday. Again, here's another one of those just collaging and then really journaling today. Do the collaging first, because then that allows me to really think about this card that I've got, and it allows me to really think about the message that I'm getting and what I want to write about. And then I do the journaling afterwards, and I really do enjoy that process. Here is the Inner Fire Awareness spread. That was another one that I posted on Instagram. That is the basic 3 card, open your heart, expand your mind, and nurture your soul. Just kind of to give you prompts to help you connect with those energies. I used the Mystical Goddess, the Star Tarot, and the Tarot of the She, which I mentioned I'm really liking that trio, that trinity. They seem to work really well together. So that was a really wonderful spread. And then, of course, my reflections at the bottom. This was actually a card that I pulled for my Self-Care Sunday reading, which is actually over here. But this tiger just looked so beautiful, and he seemed to just really match this page. So I put him over here on this side, even though he's technically a part of the other reading. But I just thought he was really beautiful. He worked really wonderful there, and I kind of love that idea of him standing alone on his own. So here's my Self-Care Sunday spread for the last Sunday, and it was what was my soul calling for me to do right now. So I have my 3 cards, my reflection, and again, my 1 card, my kind of overall energy was back here. And that works well for me because I know why I did that, and it totally makes sense to me. So that totally works. And so for the last week of July, we have, I did a 3 card reading for the week, and I just pulled my 3 cards, and here's my little reflections on each. This was the Good Morning Sunshine spread that I did on Instagram on Wednesday, and then here's my reflections. And what's kind of funny is towards the end of the month here, and I mentioned this in my reflection video, I kind of got a little bit I don't want to say tired of working with the deck, but I was having trouble connecting with this deck through the end of the month. And I think that is really reflected in my journal. You can tell the decks that I am like really personally connected to because I tend to do more elaborate things. It's like they get more of my time and attention in my journals. If you compare this insert to the insert that I did last month, to the journal I did last month for the Dame Darcy Tarot, like I think you can definitely tell a difference. There's much more thought and energy and time put into the other one because, to be perfectly honest, I had a lot more fun working with that deck. And for this deck, we had some challenges and we had some struggles, and I think that's definitely reflected in my journal in terms of what I did. Like I started out with, you know, this and, you know, these lots of detail and lots of decoration, lots of time and energy, right? It's really what it comes down to. Lots of time and energy put into these spreads. Because for me, that's just an extension of the reading itself. And you can see that I was really kind of diving into the deck, really diving into the reading, really putting my effort into the journaling spreads. And then we come to the last week and I'm like, yeah, I'm just really not feeling it anymore. I'm making myself finish the month out with this deck, but it really was I made myself finish the month with the deck. I wanted to pull out so many other decks, but I had set a goal for myself to use this as my main reading deck, and I really wanted to stick with that. So, but it's kind of funny because I think you can definitely see that reflected in my spreads and the time and attention that I put into them. Like this one is like, I mean, I feel like I didn't even really kind of bother. Like I made a color copy of the cards and just slapped them in here. And for me, that's really keys me into where I'm at with the deck and how I'm feeling about it. So then here we have my the end of the month reflections, which I keep that on a little card here, which this is an extra card from the Llewellyn deck. You know how I feel about my Llewellyn deck. And this had a little journaling spread on it. And so I just made this little journal prompt card so that I could always remember what decks or what questions I wanted to ask at the end of the month, so that I could kind of check in with my tarot practice at the end of each month. So it was, how did I honor my practice? What were my challenges and what brought me joy? And then here at the end, I have the list of the decks that I actually worked with throughout the month. So that's just always nice for me to look back at and see, you know, what decks did I work with? And it also, as the years go on, I can see, am I actually using decks, or are there decks in my collection that actually never make it to my table? So those are always handy. This was the bookmark that I had created because I'd used it, you know, throughout the month to move it around. And then we have the end, just the back where I had done some stamping, some distressing and some sewing. So that was pretty much my journal for July, and primarily working with the Chrysalis Tarot. Thank you for joining me for this flip through my tarot journal pages. If you'd like to find out more about any of the decks that I used this last month, check out my monthly reflections video, which you will find linked in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this flip through and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.